Alright, so we're about to talk about Resident Evil Revelations, the only time I actually enjoy talking about Resident Evil when it's one of the video games. Resident Evil Revelations has just come out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. Now this is a port of the original Nintendo 3DS game. Now I didn't get a chance to play the original game, but I was really excited to play this game because I love Resident Evil the games. The majority of them. Not all of them are great, but for the most part I really enjoy that series. My favorites of the series were always the first one and the fourth one, which is why Resident Evil Revelations really struck a chord with me because to me, it's kind of like the best of both of those games. In this game, the lead character is Jill Valentine. Now she was the main character of the first one, unless you played as Chris. Chris is also in this game, as well as a whole bunch of different other characters, and you take hold of all of them. Now the interesting thing about this game is that it tells the story in a non-linear sense. You will actually hear about a past event, a character might refer to something, and then in the very next scene you might actually be playing out that event as whatever character experienced that event. So there's lots of different characters that you play in this game, but there is still a central story. And that central story takes place on this cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, that is now abandoned, completely infested with monsters. There's a virus that has broken out amongst this ship, these zombified creatures are everywhere, and it's your job to try to get to the bottom of what happened. I was really surprised how much I enjoyed Resident Evil Revelations. Certain aspects were very similar to the first game. Obviously Jill Valentine and Chris are back as characters, but there was still that great creepy vibe throughout the hallways of this ship, and you hear these noises and doors would open sometimes on their own, sometimes candles would light themselves. All these creepy things happen, and as you play the game it actually really starts to affect you, and you're into this world and you feel really engrossed in being in this ship. And one of the best things about the Resident Evil games, in my opinion, has always been their use of atmosphere and location. Especially the first game, with that mansion and everything around it. Wow, I really felt like I was in there, like I was just lost in that house. In this game, I felt that very similarly, except about the ship. And in that way, it really reminded me of the first game. Now the thing about this that's more similar to the fourth game is, first off, the camera perspective. It's behind your character. It's not like a set angle that doesn't move as you enter a certain room. And the game also does have a fairly good focus on action as well. It's not all entirely survival horror. There are some big action set pieces in this game, especially when you go back to other levels and play as different characters who encountered other tragedies in other places elsewhere and other times. Those levels are always a lot more action-packed than the ones that are in the boat. Also, another thing that I loved is this goes back to some of the more puzzle-solving elements of the first one. You know, the mysteries and finding books and reading through manuscripts and trying to figure out what people are saying and everything. There was one scene in this game that really scared me. You were reading this book and you could see that whoever was writing at this time was starting to turn into a creature as they wrote, because their writing gets more and more strange. And then like she looked up and there was a freaking creature just right there after reading it, and I was like, oh my god! Wow! Like that actually got me, which was very shocking to me because, you know, it's a video game and that doesn't always work that way. But that got me. Good job, Resident Evil Revelations. It takes a while to get used to which buttons are what sometimes at first. Sometimes you have to scan things that are in a certain environment, kind of like in Metroid Prime, where you could walk around and scan everything with Samus's helmet. You have this gun that scans things, and it's cool because you can up your percentage of what you've scanned in the environment, and sometimes you can find like hidden items and stuff. But the thing that was annoying is that sometimes it was hard to remember, like, okay, is that the grenade or is that the scan? And doing a quick turnaround by just holding down and pressing X on the PS3 controller, that actually was fairly challenging and didn't really work a lot. And one thing that did annoy me at first, but I eventually accepted because you can just skip through them, at the end of each episode, because the game is broken up into a series of episodes, it does like a previously on Resident Evil Revelations thing, as if you're watching a television show, and it sums up the last episode. The thing is, if you just played it, watching that is rather tedious, but you can skip it. So I eventually forgave that, but it seemed really weird at first when I encountered that in the game. Also, in the middle of the game, I actually recorded this on my iPhone because I found it absolutely hilarious. You're in this really serious situation, and you look over, and this one character next to you is just dressed so idiotically. I could not stop laughing when I saw it. So here's me, and there's my partner. Apparently she is a stripper. I mean, like, she's on some rescue mission right now. I don't understand what's happening. I just thought that was kind of stupid. It was so obvious. Let's just make the girl look all hot and sexy for no reason. But overall, I really enjoyed Resident Evil Revelations. The game was a lot of fun. The story was interesting, well convoluted, just like all the big Resident Evil games are. There's always this big, humongous government scheme that you don't really understand fully, but it's really about the gameplay and how much of the story feels as if you're invested in it. And in Resident Evil Revelations, I was consistently invested in the story of the game while playing it. I had a lot of fun with the atmosphere, and I like the fact that it combines certain elements of the best Resident Evil games. I'm going to give Resident Evil Revelations an 8.5 out of 10. It may not stick with you as well as past Resident Evil games, but I think it's a lot of fun. And if you enjoy the series, you'll probably enjoy this one too. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.